So it's just on
You're
Capitol.
saying the foot buttons aren't working for the pedestrian signals?
Correct.
They beep, but they're not working.
It's all timed, it's not, people don't,
So despite
Prompted.
it making noise,
Yeah.
it's all the time.
yes.
And that's for all of
Yeah.
Capitol?
Okay, so
Unless it
signals
changed
are-
after I left in
It's like a
2017,
placebo.
you would know that better than me,
It
Rachel.
seems like they're working, so I go west on Capitol, I cross Oakland, if I don't push the button, I don't get a walk.
I think sometimes, and I'm not sure if this is the case with these, that
Or I don't get a
We
walk,
confirm
somebody I
that.
inspect.
they'll just throw the blinking hand. Unless you press it, then they'll throw the timer on there occasionally. So
I can confirm with DPW our understanding of that and make sure that we pass it over to all of you for consideration. So-
Correct.
Now I'm going.
And when they
Yes, I
redid the
know.
Capitol Drive, when the state did their analysis, there was a lot of analysis on that Morris turn, how the culvers would all work, so it's probably, I don't know if you have that as the traffic analysis and flow on that stretch right there.
That would be interesting, cause there's
That was
really
just
no
a
other
few-
option. I mean, if you wanna go west out of Culvers,
Right.
Yeah.
there's,
And then
there's no
to,
way to do it. other
to
than
add
doing
to
U-turn.
that, the previous police chief did an extensive review of U-turns and then the village board voted to just eliminate, prohibiting U-turns because people do it anyway.
Right.
You know, so I know there's a lot of information on that already, so I don't know if that should be looked at again.
That's really, to
'cause
me,
it's
the
gonna
key.
happen.
Yeah, if it's a problem, or if people think it's a problem. Sometimes I think people think U-turns are illegal regardless, across the board, which is not the
Yeah, I
case.
did have that
That's
discussion
the
with one gentleman, whether it was legal or not. But, and Bart, I mean, if you can, I don't believe that was, any police information about those U-turns was in the data. If you can forward something, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can try to find the
But
old
that,
police
yeah,
chief's
that's
report.
definitely, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can dig up the former police chief's report on that, hopefully in old village board materials.
Or through the Capitol Drive reconstruction, there might be some
Yeah.
stuff too.
Yeah,
Leanne.
I'll do some digging.
Do you also
Right.
have that analysis, the safe schools and stuff?
Safe Kids.
Safe Kids
That
on
was the
Morris?
that was the most recent grant.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
I do think that we share that was a PowerPoint presentation, correct?
the final summary results, yes.
Correct.
Yeah, I did, they do have that for sure.
Yes.
are there any flashing beacons? Those like we were talking about the rapid flash beacon crossing areas near Larkin over by Wells Fargo in that area because that is a pretty high traffic student area and I know they provide one by Metro Market, but I was just thinking they should probably have. I mean, those are pretty quick things to put up that would be beneficial for a.
So I'd be more than happy
crosswalks.
to have a discussion about that.
Well, there's certain kinds that you can't put on state highways either, because there's some
Oh,
litigation
so
going on.
There,
So you can't put like the temporary ones on the state highway, you can do the one with the arm, like we had on Capitol on the
Yeah,
state
yeah.
highway.
I think that one's great. And actually, I was in Madison this weekend bicycling and actually came across a state highway over by the airport that I needed to cross on my bicycle. And I noticed there was one of those rapid flash beacons, no intersection in sight, and pressed it, and all of a sudden, all the cars stopped and the beacons came on. That's like, I looked, actually, I had to take a second look, like, oh, this is working.
Oh, that's
Wow.
Madison.
I know that's Madison.
Madison, nice.
we
Liberal.
used to have one on Wilson down the street from my house, and it disappeared when they
Yeah, they
redid
moved it,
Wilson.
they moved it when they did the reconstruction. The hope was is that the permanent structures and infrastructure that they put in there were going to help with safety, so they didn't need it, so they moved it somewhere else. I think they might have put it on Oakland. I'm not sure.
I have a question about a different topic, is that
Sure.
okay? So when you were talking about access to Atwater Park, and you said that there was some concern about, I'm gonna say, non-resident vehicles. I have two questions about that. One is, if Shorewood residents have a visitor who is, let's say, out of town, out of state, but that's the one that has the car seats, I sure hope they use that vehicle and not the resident vehicle. Second question is, and this I'm just wanting to know if you know from the comments you heard, was this about racism?
That's a good question. We didn't specifically ask that, or if it's something deeper embedded. We heard and I'll be honest, there were some outlier comments that have been brought up about residents versus non-residents, multifamily versus single-family residents. Definitely biases were shared. I mean, that's just human nature when you're speaking. And when we're sitting there trying to distill, what information is pertinent to the analysis and what information just flat out is not. We did hear some information about crime. There's concern that there was a correlation made, not backed by anything but opinion, but correlation between on-street parking and rising crime in Shorewood. And, incident reports would be able to confirm or refute that. But you bring up good questions. And whenever there's a policy in a city that says, one group is preferred over another, that can raise the question of, is it equitable? If that's a desire of the community for access to be equitable, then you got to run the policies through that test.
So I have an additional question about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because when I saw that too, I didn't understand that. More than likely, when people are talking about resident versus non-resident, they're really not talking about Whitefish Bay. I mean, let's be honest, which is why you asked the question.
Right.
They're talking about more. What the title of this is Atwater Park Equitable Access, but it's talking about creating inequity. Am I understanding that correctly? Is somebody's dog barking? Did you hear what I said? Or the question that I asked?
Creating in access. Is that what you mentioned? There was a squeak when you were speaking. Sorry.
Yeah. Isn't it really? Shouldn't the title of this really be Atwater Park Inequitable Access? Because that kind of seems like the feedback that was being shared. Sorry, I think my hackles up just a little bit on this one.
This has been raised.
So,
go ahead.
So I guess that's because
this has been raised at the Parks Commission and at the board by the neighbors who have bought houses around this park. And I mean, there's a parking issue. Is there adequate parking? Are they blocked? That's what we're here for. But it's also been raised. I think historically, at one point, there was a fee. You had to come to Village Hall to get a fee, and you had to.
Give
your address, make sure you're at Shorewood.
Yeah, but they still had the trams.
Yeah, they had
that's how long ago. It's like the 19th.
And the Parks Commission said, no, we are a welcoming community. We are not, I think the community is also on the proposal on parking meters at the lakefront was pretty strong, at least I perceive that, which would get like charging non-residents. There was a lot of exact same pushback at the Parks Commission on this is what we are.
So there's a lot more discussion coming about that, for sure.
Well, I think one thing on the Atwater parking for, as we say, equitable access, I should be the biggest proponent about limiting parking or anything like that, but I do feel there is, especially during these summer months, it's really tight, and that is an issue there. And that is one spot where we could possibly do an angled parking because we have extra green space. I mean, that's difficult for Oakland when everything's tight, but in an area like Atwater Beach, we have some giving room there. So I've always thought angled parking there would be well.
Angled parking on what street?
On Capitol for Atwater Beach.
Oh.
To kind of
On Lake or Capitol?
On Lake
Capitol.
Drive to essentially take that sidewalk, maybe move
Right.
it back 5 feet, and then put angled parking there so we could fit
Oh, that's a
double
good
the amount
idea.
of cars. Now, do you want to meter that too and create revenue for the city? Still equitable access, but additional revenue for the parking. That's another discussion. But I've always thought that angled parking would be really well, and almost wish they put that into the Lake Drive restoration.
Well,
project.
we couldn't do it for the Lake Drive restoration because we couldn't change the boundaries of the road.
Oh, sure.
Because the state is redoing it in 2025.
It's coming up, 2025,
25,
summer 20.
So
Okay.
that's when they're gonna tear the whole thing up. That's our opportunity to talk about actual infrastructure with
Sure.
the curb boundaries.
Maybe
and
some
the
lighting
house.
in there too. If people feel like there's some issue of crime, I mean, then in addition to that angled parking, put a few extra street lights there too over that angled parking. Maybe, I don't know, create some. Again, we're not. I actually opening the beach up for more people in that sense. If we're adding extra parking spaces.
So, and that kind of ties into my
No.
question. So there's a whole bunch of categories in here. You've picked a couple topics, and I know you're providing a summary. Was it based on frequency? Was it based on severity? Was it based on some sort of criteria? And the items that are not listed, are those still going to be considered?
Frequency was definitely a consideration, as well as the depth of discussion intensity of these topics. The other ones, typically what we've done when we have written information provided to us by the community, we talk to the city, the village, and we would say, do you want that raw information included in the appendix of the document, or in some sort of form that the community can see what that their voice is being heard and is being reflected. And that may include profanity. It may include, some very racist tone comments. Just to be, very frank, it may include some well thought out ideas. What we try to do for this purpose, for a meeting, an advisory committee, is provide, what the pertinent themes are. That really they'll move the needle when looking at ways to improve parking and transportation in the area. Some of the other comments, just to give you a flavor, with residential, someone had mentioned, can we create an ordinance that we eliminate on-street parking and we require people to build cement parking pads in their yards, in their backyards?
Oh yeah, that was there for that was awesome.
So, I'm giving, and that's not right or wrong. It's just it was mentioned. We can include all that, but we want to make sure that we're focusing on themes that have been repeated, but also, we're looking at our own, using our own independent judgment, and we've been in the field and we've observed. So many of the themes that have been brought up, we concur. We understand, we get what they're saying.
And I'm not questioning your expertise, but for groups like mine, like Bike and Ped, I can still work on some of those things that you haven't selected, especially if they're well thought out and they don't involve any sort of craziness. So it gives me input for my roadmap, even if it's not something that's selected as part of this effort. So when I've seen the village survey output, there's great summaries at the top, there's charts, there's great ideas that are pulled out, and then in the back you get all the quotes. And that's what I would expect. Which are fun.
I would say, just for your reference, Phil, I would say that at some point we would want that in appendices, because we do typically provide that, and if there are certain ones that might, need to be reviewed to make sure we're not, slandering anyone or things like that, I suppose.
Identifying information.
We could discuss that, but
it's good to know what your neighbors think.
Yeah, typically we do always like to provide that in appendices, but I appreciate the broader overview to help focus the conversation here.
I have one question about
and to the point of making sure others, can see what their peers, their neighbors are thinking. In these meetings, these town hall meetings, when people do write their thoughts down on post-its, we make sure that they stay up. We try to organize them in between and help people get a good sense. And we did notice quite a few people reading others, and that's helpful. That's part of the community education. You want to, possibly learn from others and grow. So we make sure that information is very clear and out there. But your point is taken, Bart, and we make sure that we document that all in a very organized manner and can have that as an appendix within the document.
Sure.
I was just curious, the comments that you're getting now, they're not included with this town hall summary that have been received up to this report? Yes or no?
Electronic ones?
No, not specifically.
So when are
that's
you
a whole
gonna
other category we're
incorporate
getting in there. And they are specific. Many of those are very specific about an intersection or a road, speeding on roads. Some of them align with the metro market area. So not to answer your question, not specifically, we didn't, call those out, but we are reviewing those as they come in, and they will be reflected in
when?
the larger document. When we work on that section, whatever their topic is about.
Because usually these town hall meetings bring out, not a diverse segmentation of the village, so usually you get more diverse
Correct.
population through the comments, so I guess I would like to see them in each report as you get them in that time frame. Personally.
And I guess just for reference, Phil, the map that's in the back of the corner here, so like Phil said, the comments come in to me and then I forward them along and I copy all of the members of the team on it. And then if they're specific to a location or an intersection or a topic, I've just been keeping track of that in my office in terms of where they're, referencing.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are area specific, and then I do have a general pile of, just parking requests that I don't have a dot in the map per se, so. I would say there's probably 50 to 60 that have come in so far. I end up getting 2 or 3 a day. Like we put it in the manager's memo so people do respond to it. So, yeah, those. Just from my reading of them, they generally do match these themes. But I appreciate because I agree with Erica in terms of incorporating those throughout the process so that we keep track of.
They should, I
what
really
gets
feel
sent.
they should be in these interim
Sure.
reports.
Or a lot of the comments that you're getting.
Well, what we could do is, just so that we understand where the information is coming from, the next town hall meeting, we'll have something similar as far as a summary, but we also can have a category of, online submitted comments and what those are. Or we could have within these sections, specifically called out, that they weren't in attendance, but these are comments that were received, from the online platform.
So the full report will be available by the next meeting, or will it not?
When you say report,
Full, like
Like a long one?
final.
Just a long one of this input, or is it all going into a final report after all of the town halls? Because you keep mentioning putting in the appendix of the final report.